Hey, gang, welcome back to Ken Michaels Radio. As you know, the Beatles are the topic of conversation on all of our shows here. And this time out, we have Andy Nicholes with us. You know Andy for being one half of the team of Two Legs, the Paul McCartney Podcast, with Tom Hunyady. He's also been a guest on this channel, and he's been on one of my other podcast shows, Talk More Talk, a solo Beatles videocast. And he's here to do a show on a recent feature that I've been doing here on this channel called The Deeper You Go, in which I asked my guests to list 10 deep tracks from one of the solo Beatles. And actually, at some point, we'll do one on the group as well. But anyway, Andy, welcome back to Ken Michaels Radio.
Good to be back, Ken. And I thought the next thing you were going to say was after the deeper you go, the higher you fly, but I don't want to fly anywhere.
Not these days.
No. Although soon, though, but it's good to be back on your channel and always enjoy coming on any of the myriad of shows you do, trivia contests, and happy to reciprocate and be on your channel as you were on ours live a few Sundays ago.
Yeah, you just reminded me it's been a while since I've done a trivia show, so that's got to be happening very soon.
Okay.
But you were
Yeah,
a winner five times, was it?
5 times. Yeah, baby.
Nobody else has done that. The reigning champion so far on this channel. Will that
Peace
ever
and love,
change?
Joe. Peace and love, Joe.
And Dylan Seavey won once.
Yeah, but good to be back on your channel, and you've had some great interviews and shows as of late across all of your shows and radio shows. Notably, the Wings little reunion you did just last week, and that was an awesome show.
I'm pretty lucky that that happened. And I'm very grateful that I got the three Wings members on the show. And actually, if it wasn't for the fact that I found out about this new recording of Time to Hide that was just done as a tribute to Denny by this band called McDonald's Farm, and Steve Holly is drumming on it. Um, the information was that they were releasing it on Denny's birthday, October 29th. And I completely forgot that was his birthday. So I contacted the three members and I was hoping I could get something out there before his birthday, and we recorded it the day before. So I was fortunate that all three were available at the same time. So that's going to be a special moment for me. And for anyone that hasn't seen it, please check it out. Sharing the
Yeah,
memories of Denny Lane, Denny Sywell, Steve Holly, and Lawrence Juber.
and how have you heard the version of Time to Hide yet by this
Yeah,
tribute band?
it's pretty
Yeah.
good. They actually did use harmonica playing from Denny, and it's not the version that's on Speed of Sound. And I don't think it's the one from Wings Over America. I'd have to double check on that. But
Mm,
they did use his own performing, so he's on the record.
awesome,
Yeah.
awesome.
So we're going to do a Deeper You Go show on George Harrison. And before we do, since I noticed you have an ELO shirt on there, you get to see Jeff's one of Jeff's shows recently?
Yeah, in September, 2 months ago, I saw his Over and Out tour in Madison Square Garden with a couple of friends, which was quite good. It was the second time I'd seen Jeff Lynne's ELO, as we'll
Hmm.
call it. And it was good. It was very, Jeff plays the hits, plays them like you know the record, which a lot of people like. He doesn't deviate too much. There's no kind of long-winding solos. He plays the songs just the way you know them,
Right.
which was fine. And a lot of people have said that Jeff doesn't really engage a lot with the audience, but that was never Jeff's style. Jeff is, just a studio prowess musician who is just totally, the studio is his home, right? So live is a different thing for him. So he's going to play the hits the way that you know them. And it was a great concert. And it was the last time I'm going to see him, obviously. So it was a great concert. All the hits. Could have been, it was a little bit shorter of a set than the last time I had seen him, but I'd last seen him in 2019 when Danny Harrison opened for him
I
here
saw
in
that.
Newark.
Yep.
Yeah, and and I was in the fifth row for that, and that was incredible. Like No Handle with Care this time, things like that.
Mhm.
Twilight and some deeper stuff that he played that were not played this time around.
Yeah. Yeah, I was at that tour. I didn't see this last one, and it's a shame that this is his final tour. I
Right.
did see one that he did. I keep forgetting the years, 2014 or so, right?
2000 actually was the third time I'd seen him. 2016 he came back to Radio City.
That's the one that I saw. So we were in the same at the same show.
for both of them. And that's when he opened up with Tightrope from a New World
Yes.
Record,
It was worth it just for that alone.
wasn't it? I mean, the whole
One of
show
my
opened up with Tightrope. That was fantastic.
it's one of my favorite ELO songs and a great opener for a
Yes.
record. And actually, one of the earliest concerts I ever saw in my life was ELO when they played for Out of the Blue, and that was in 1978. I saw the show for that.
You
And
saw the Out of the
actually,
Blue tour? Yeah.
yeah, I hate to say this, but it was a bit of a disappointment for me because I felt like I was listening to the record. It was that close.
Yes. Yeah.
I could have been in my bedroom with the lights off and just listening to their albums, and it would have sounded the same, you know. But in a
Yeah.
way, it tells you how good the band was that they can replicate what they did on the record so closely.
So closely. So closely. And that was that was a great opener for that. I'm gonna put you on the spot. What song closes a New World Record that's got a Beatles song featured in it in the lyrics?
Shangri-La.
There you go.
Okay. That's one of my trivia games in the past. I did that. Maybe
Of course you would know that. What's
yeah.
that?
Maybe I'll bring back that game.
Yeah. But I know my co-host Tom Hunyady, he saw him a few weeks later in Michigan to close him out, so he got to see him too. And yeah, it was really nice to see him. And he's going to do a few more. He actually added a few more dates in England for next summer to close it out.
Yeah. I hope he changes his mind.
I hope he does too, or maybe just work some more deeper stuff into that set a little bit because it was a good set, but it was a very safe set. There was what the shows that we had saw at Radio City and the
Hmm.
Prudential Center with Danny Harrison. Those were you had some deep cuts thrown in there. Although he did stepping out this time, which was cool
Oh, nice.
from Out of the Blue.
That's what I live for. The deep cuts.
The deep cuts and the here stepping out was good. And I think back in 2016 he did Secret Messages too.
I'm not sure. I got to remember that far back.
Right,
Yeah,
right. But yeah, that was a good experience. And here we are 1 year now from now and then, believe it or not, which is crazy,
I know. I feel like it came out last week.
isn't it?
Yeah, it's never left my head, that song, since it's come out.
No. And did you see the lyric video, which was a little simple thing, but
Yeah.
they did, a little simple thing they threw out there, but at least they mark the occasion.
Yeah, well, they're acknowledging the anniversary, which is nice.
Mm,
So I just wish that when the single came out, it only had 2 weeks on our charts here. It was
yeah,
at number 6 one week and then it dropped and then it was off the charts. And I wish it had more staying power. And I wish that radio had played it here in the States. Did so well in the UK. It was
it
number one
did.
for like a month.
Yeah. Well, they know a thing or two about their music over there.
This is true. They've given us proof of that. So
Yes.
speaking of deep tracks,
Yeah.
let's get into your list one at a time of deep tracks from George Harrison's solo career. And these have to be songs that we consider to be obscure, lesser known songs, certainly not hit records. Now, I did write to Andy before the show that there's a lot of singles that George released that didn't do all that well that you could qualify because I would say they're obscure. The average person doesn't know Wake Up My Love. The average person doesn't know Any Road
Right.
or It's a Shame Horse to the Water, which is such a great song. Um, they wouldn't know what else. Teardrops was not a big hit, something like that. But the big hits, you got to eliminate them. No My Sweet Lord, no Give Me Love, no What Is Life.
Right.
Even at this point, if you base it on what radio plays, like I was saying to you before this show, Dark Horse would be obscure at this point. But
I think maybe even Got My Mind Set on You would be
uh,
obscure.
it's a number one hit. You can't call that obscure.
You can't, but again, we're talking about the average person here. And the average person probably doesn't even know average person. No, that's a different Beatle. Sorry.
Yes. They definitely don't know average person. So I'm curious to find out, since I'm so used to hearing you talk about Paul all the time, we talk about a different Beatle here, what your tastes are where George Harrison is concerned. So let's hear them.
Fire at will, Commander, as they say in Star Wars. So yeah, I just picked 10 tracks, most mainly album cuts. Trying to see, just running through the list. I don't think any of them were singles, but you'll tell me that if I'm wrong on that, because you are the man with that.
Hmm.
These were album cuts that I still think illustrate how great of a songwriter and singer George Harrison is. Looking at, let's see, so they're not in any order, but I will start with an album we're all going to get soon in about a week's time. Living in the Material World. I pulled from this album two songs, but the one I'll just talk about first is The Light That Has Lighted the World. I think that that is George through and through, in songwriting, in singing, in production, and in everything.
Well, no argument there. I mean, I've said many times how much that's one of my favorite songs from him. The message he's conveying in that song, the arrangement of it, Nicky Hopkins playing his solo in the middle of the song, which is just so right for that song. Um, Both that song and Who Can See It are very much similar in what George is saying in the song
Mhm.
about, appreciating the people in his life who accept him the way he is now. He's not as he was in the past, that kind of thing, which he has in both those songs. And I love the sound of George's singing on that particular.
Yeah.
It's so heartfelt.
And the way that the song just opens up beautifully and melodically, it just takes you into a nice, relaxed, meditative state. And
Hmm.
it's George, and that's a George song. If there ever was a George song, you wanted to play somebody that was somebody who didn't know George Harrison, that wasn't a hit. Oh,
Hmm.
what was George Harrison about? That's a song you'd play, I
Right.
think, in my
It's a
opinion.
deeply personal song, so it tells you what he really was all about at that point in his life.
Yep. Um, Number two, we're going to go to 33 and a third, which is one of my favorite albums of his.
Hmm.
And I have chosen, again, from this album, I've chosen two songs also. But the first one that I'll talk about now is See Yourself from
Ah.
33 and a third. I think "See Yourself" is an honest song. It's a song that has a lot of me. It's very real. It's very true. The lyrics, it's easier to tell a lie than it easier to tell the truth. All those kind of truisms that are in the lyrics of that song is very much George through it. Maybe it's not as spiritual as some of the other stuff, but this wasn't. This was a different kind of record. This
Hmm.
George was a little bit lighter here with this one, a little funkier. Although there was some spirituality on this with Dear One, of course. Dear One had kind of harkens back to a little of what Material World was, but
Hmm.
See Yourself, I just think is a simple enough song that conveys a very true lyric, and George was a very true person.
Right. Do you know the whole story behind that song?
You have to refresh my memory.
Well, it was really in response to the criticism
Oh,
Paul McCartney was getting at
about
the
the
time.
LSD, about the LSD trip, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, Paul was not telling fans to go take LSD. They were asking him if he took the drug, and he wanted to be honest about it. And then he did just that, and then the press attacked him. So that was George defending Paul in a way,
Right.
saying it's easier to criticize somebody else than to see yourself. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's Paul's famous interview in the back garden there, but I'm asking you not to print this. And it's your responsibility. You're going to
yeah,
go print this thing.
right.
So yeah, I've always enjoyed See Yourself as well. So for my next one, we're going to go to Gon Troppo from
Okay.
1982. And I have chosen a song that's gained a lot of traction since George's passing, namely because it was in the concert for George. And
Hmm.
that's the way it goes from Gon Troppo. I'll be honest with you, Ken. I was not familiar with this song before the concert for George. Now, granted, that was 2 years ago, and I was all of 21 then, so I was still kind of learning my way around George's catalog.
Right.
But when Joe Brown sang that song at the concert for George, I mean, I was in hook, line, and sinker. I said, "What album is this on?" And sure enough, I had it. I just didn't know it. I didn't. So then I'm like, "Wow, this is a great song. Great, great song."
Yeah.
I I I think it had hit potential actually when you think about it.
Hmm. I think so too. Although when I look back at Gon Troppo, a song like Mystical One kind of jumps at me as having commercial potential
Hmm.
there as a hit. But evidently this song, That's the Way It Goes, was a favorite of George's because he put it on the Best of Dark Horse as well. So I think that probably helped,
Yes,
gain some,
traction.
yeah, on that song. But yeah,
Um,
definitely. Joe Brown was a big highlight of that show, especially closing it the way he did.
oh yeah, Joe Brown really was like an MVP of that whole concert. Doing it, and that's the way it goes. Of course, he's on the record too. Obviously,
Right.
he was a part of these sessions along with Gary Brooker too. I believe was on this record
Okay.
on a couple of tracks. I don't know if he was on That's the Way It Goes, but I just love the lyrics. There's a man talking on the radio. What he's saying, I really, seems he's lost. He stops. It works. It works as the lyrics. And then what easier saying is, to say to somebody, that's the way it goes.
Uh-huh.
Oh, too bad. That's the way it goes. It just works. It works as a song that really works as a George song. And ever since 2002, if I'm making a George playlist or if whatever, this song is on it. The
Okay.
studio version or the live version by Joe Brown. Always.
Okay. Very good choices. By the way, I just want to say, and I neglected to say this at the start of the show, that these songs could also be songs that George covers. They don't have to necessarily be his own originals.
Gotcha.
Sure, for a lot of people, if not for you, could be a favorite.
Sure. Absolutely. Any cover, any of those covers. And the next choice that I'm going to choose is not a cover, but it's an album that actually eventually had some covers on it. And we're going to Somewhere in England. And this is the rejected Somewhere in England, but it was on this version of the album and eventually the released version. And the song I chose from this album is Life Itself. I
Okay.
think Life Itself isn't in the same qualities that The Light Has Lighted the World, same kind of thing. Um, and again, made an appearance on the Best of Dark Horse too.
Right.
Interesting that George chose this song. No, not that he didn't choose this song, although that should have been on the Best of Dark Horse. It should have been. I know Tom Hunyady always says that. Life Itself, again, another peaceful, tranquil song that puts you in a nice, relaxed mood. You are the one, you are the love. It's a love song,
Yeah.
essentially. Um, but it's a very peaceful song. And it's another one to me that just screams George Harrison when I hear it.
Right. No, that's an important aspect to bring out in George's songs. It's not just the melody and the lyrics, it is the atmosphere that he creates with it, that very laid back, relaxed feeling. Very soothing, meditative, you know.
I think that's a big part of George's music. One facet of it because we knew he was, he had a lot of different sides of him. He was comedic, he was silly, he could be serious, but when he was in the mood to write a song that wanted you to be chill, he could do it. He did a pretty damn good a job of that. And a lot of these songs that I've chosen, I would say fit that category. One, two, three, four, five, six out of my 10, I think fit that category of like chillness. So, I mean, if that says to, that should speak to you on what kind of where George was at most of the time. I mean, where do you rate Life Itself as a song? Is that a highlight for you on Somewhere in England?
Um, Not really. Only because to me it's very repetitive.
Yeah,
I like the words a lot of the song. It's just that Somewhere in England is an album where I like the original version of the album with the four songs that were taken off.
yeah,
I really love, speaking of covers, Baltimore Oriole and Blood from a Clone and all those years ago. Teardrops is very commercial, and I understand
very,
the appeal of that one. I've grown to really like That Which I Have Lost, and there's great guitar work from George on that. And Writings on the Wall is another one of those very soft, quiet, laid back songs where he's saying a lot and it's very spiritual in there. I love those songs a lot, and of course all those years ago. But Life Itself, I don't dislike it. I just find that it's too much repeating the same melody
yeah,
over
you
and
got,
over.
but the religious overtones are there where he's talking about, gurus and all that stuff towards the end of the song, which, but he felt inclined enough to include it on the Best of Dark Horse. So he must have felt a strong connection to it.
Right. It's important to know what were important songs to him.
Yeah. Yep. So number one, two, three, four, number five, we're going to go back to 33 and a third.
Hmm.
And this one actually goes back quite a bit. actually goes back to the Beatle days, and that is Beautiful Girl
Okay.
from, from 33 and the Third, which we know goes back to, I mean, I know it was also, it was part of All Things Must Pass sessions, which it came out on the Uber set, but I do believe it was written during the latter stages of the Beatles period. Yes or
I
no?
remember, I think he said he was writing it for Doris Troy initially.
Yeah. This is one of those songs that I think that is not, this is just kind of more poppy. This is not a song that has kind of religious overtones or it's meditative. It's just, it's a nice, it's got a great melody, obviously, and the key changes in this song are just phenomenal. Where his voice goes up and all the way she smiled at me and all that stuff.
Mm.
Those parts of the song, and then really kind of funky keyboard playing on this too. I don't know if that's, I think it's Billy Preston probably on this record. If I think it was him on this, if I remember my credits correctly,
Okay.
looking at the sleeve
They didn't,
notes.
they didn't specify on each track who plays on each one, but I
Well,
know.
Billy's on the record, but great, they're great keyboard work on this song. And
Mhm.
Billy is in the photo there for the credits. So one, we would have to think that this this was Billy. But I've always enjoyed it. I loved hearing the demo or the work, the early version that we got on the All Things Must Pass box 3 years ago.
Right.
But this one here is just another standout George track for me in his solo catalog.
It's interesting for me to discover which songs George brings back from his past that he didn't finish before, or taking the songs from the Beatle days like Not Guilty or Circles and all that. And then you learn the songs, you go back to All Things Was Past that he didn't include on the album, which he never released.
Mhm.
Which ones he felt were strong enough to bring back or to finish. So, and Beautiful Girl was one of them.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, so he said he was writing for Doris Troy, but he wouldn't have been writing it about. You think he was thinking about Patty when he was writing it in at the time,
Very possible. I mean, that was
right?
the woman of his life at the time.
Sure, sure.
I actually have an interview. It's an audio interview with George where he even denied that something was about Patty, and yet all the history books say the song was about Patty.
Right.
Maybe he wants to keep you guessing.
I'm sure he probably, even now, how many years later, he still wants to keep us guessing. 6. Okay, here's my sixth one or seventh. Yeah. I'm going to go back to Material World and a song that we have heard a lot of lately because it got remixed. We got the remix release of it already, and that's Be Here Now
Ah.
from Material World. And I have to be honest, this is a song 5 years ago, even that I probably wasn't too keen on. 5 years ago, I probably would have told you I like Give Me Love, I like Sue You, Sue Me Blues, I like the title track, I like That Is All, and that's probably about it. And maybe Don't Let Me Wait Too Long because it's
Hmm.
poppy. And that would have been it. But then, kind of getting into the podcasting world and meeting you guys and giving these albums a real full appreciation and a listen, and mainly your love of the record because it's your favorite of all time, really gave me cause to really, really study this record and listen to it a lot. And
Hmm.
over the last 5 years, I've done that quite a bit. So now that we're getting it again, and of course, what's the first track that comes out is Be Here Now in a remix. And
Well, Give Me
uh,
Love. Give Me Love was
well,
the
Give Me Love was, but yeah, but Be Here Now, aside from that,
yeah.
and a good friend of ours, Janet Davis, she had a great analogy for Be Here Now. She said that she likens it to like it's George doing Long, Long, Long Part Two, soft spoken, soft singing, and
Hmm.
I kind of understand what she's saying with that. And there's no better message than that George gives here in this song than Be Here Now. It's a song that it took a long time for me to grow on me, but God, do I love it. I love its message. I love the production on it, but really, of all the messages that George gives you, be here now, be here in the present, and that's what you're getting in this song. And it's one of his. Again, this would be like if I was making a top 10 George solo list. I know we're doing deep cuts here,
Yeah.
but if I was going to do my overall top 10 George songs, this song's in that list somewhere. Probably in the bottom half, but it's in there.
Okay. I'm proud of you, Andy.
Well, you taught me. You taught me to give that album a chance. And I mean, I know why you like it, but give me your take on Be Here Now and why do you gravitate to it as much as you do?
Well, at the risk of sounding repetitive, because I kind of look at this song as a sleeper song. It's a song that you don't appreciate when you first hear it, and it
No.
takes a long time before you completely appreciate the song. It's kind of if I had to make a comparison, Within You Without You is the same thing in the Beatles catalog. Within You Without You was a song that I've heard so many Beatle fans say when they listen to Sergeant Pepper, they skip over that one and they go right to When I'm 64. Within You Without You is very demanding to listen to. It's a 5-minute song. It's slow. It's got a deep message in it. You have to be fully engaged in the song. And then in terms of musicality. There's all the great instrumentation, the Indian instruments, and then the Western instruments, all the orchestration that gets put into it. It really is, in my opinion, the most overlooked masterpiece in the Beatles catalog, Within You Without You. I've grown to really love that song. I'm even quite happy that, and for a lot of people, it was out of place to put it on the new Blue album. You know, that's, that's, if you want to call a song a deep cut, even though it's on one of the biggest albums of all time, Within You Without You would be that. And Be Here Now is also a song that while it's maybe a minute shorter than Within
Yeah.
You Without You, is very slow, just a few words, very little instrumentation other than the acoustic guitar. And I think what else is there? A harmonium maybe on there.
Yep. Little harmonium, I think, in this song. I mean, and the lyrics,
Yeah,
a mind that wants to wander around a corner is an unwise mind.
right.
Um, Now is Be Here Now, and it's not what it was before. It's a very simple message. So it's relevant. It was relevant in 1973. It's relevant in 2024, 2025.
Yeah. And he would
Um,
take one word, like remember, and it stretches for the whole musical bar. And then
right.
now for the whole bar. And it's very much like a mantra, if you
It's
think
very much
about
like a mantra. It's got the qualities of an Indian music that are largely in one key, right? George always said that Indian
it.
music is largely in one key. A lot of it, and here's another example of that. So there's that influence is on here. I'm just looking at the notes here from the book. Be Here Now was written in Los Angeles a week after Miss Odell. I moved from Malibu as it was too far to drive to the studio each day. I was almost falling asleep. I had the guitar in bed. The melody came fast. The lyric was inspired by the funny story called The Transformation of Richard Alpert into Baba Ram Das.
Mm. And it
So,
just goes to show you, you talk about someone who musically can go all over the place. He goes from Miss Odell to this.
right, little poppy song, which was, he meant for, and now he goes to this, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was a nice, again, I think discovering music is a lifelong process and nobody can know everything in one time. So, I might have had these albums for 20 years, but to actually take the time and listen to it and appreciate it, and you might have to be a little older to do this. Maybe 20 years ago, I wouldn't have appreciated it.
Mm.
But when you get a little older, you can. And this album, I think we said this on one of the live chats. I think you have to be a little older to appreciate this one, maybe more as you get a little older. I mean, you heard it in 1973, so you probably liked it right away, though.
I liked it a lot for its musicality, for the melodies and George's guitar playing, and I was into his spiritual stuff. I appreciate the lyrics so much more now than I did back then, and what
Mhm.
George was trying to say about himself. I've often said living in the material world is like his Plastic Ono band. It's very
Yes.
musical. It's got songs that mean more to him. Whereas so did songs that All Things Must Pass. A lot of All Things Must Pass was very commercial, and that's not a dirty word in my book. But
No,
you can't compete with the light that has lighted the world and who can see it and be here now,
no, you
as far as
cannot.
I'm concerned. When you get
So
to the heart and soul of who George Harrison was.
absolutely. And speaking of that, this is the album most people are going to come back to for George, and that's All Things Must Pass. And this is for my next track, and we're going to totally change it up. Although there's a lot of spiritual stuff on this album, this song, my next song on this list, is not. And I went with the fast-paced rocker "Awaiting on You All" from
Okay.
All Things Must Pass. Man, I love that song. That song's like put the key in the car, hit drive, and go from the
Uh-huh.
minute the song starts to the minute the song ends. All of it. The Spectre Wall of Sound, the crazy lyrics, the Pope owning 51% of General Motors, all that stuff. I love every bit of it. It is religious in overtones. The Lord's waiting on you all, so it's preachy George a little bit, but it's done in a such a fast, rocking way that just knocks your socks off for all 2.5 minutes of the song.
Right. I agree with you totally. And I remember very well when the album came out how that track, I mean, so many tracks from All Things Must Pass got airplay on rock radio, but definitely Awaiting on You All was among them, as well as the title track and Wah Wah and If Not For You and Beware of Darkness. So many songs from that collection. Uh, and of course, My Sweet Lord and What Is Life. But and Awaiting on You All, George did at the concert for Bangladesh. That's how popular the song was. I guess that George felt he should do it, and you can get away with it to go a little bit deeper into all
Sure.
things.
Yeah, I mean, from the minute the song starts, I mean, the huge loud sounds and the brass tune. I mean, the live version of Bangladesh is a little stripped down because there's no production or there's no brass or horns, but everything about it, the echo, the vocal drenched in echo, all that stuff, and the fact that the song just ends on a hard stop. Boom, done, song over. And then the next song is All Things Must Pass. So you've just had this
Right.
frenetic workout for 2.5 minutes. And now we're gonna actually play the song, one of the best songs of all time
Yeah.
written, that could sum up life. All Things Must Pass. After Awaiting on You All, brilliant sequencing.
Mhm. I'm not sure if you've discussed this before. You probably have, but how do you feel all these years later about Phil Spector's production on All Things Must Pass? Because there's always people who will say it's overproduced, too much drenched in echo and reverb and all of that. And even George said before he died that maybe it was a little too much.
Not me. More the merrier. Throw the entire kitchen sink in, Phil. I love it. I love all that stuff. I can appreciate George's ear, and like when he did this remix in 2001 when it came out. Although it still had it on here, but it's much more scaled back on the 2021
Right.
remix that came out. That you can really tell is much more brought down. It's not as loud. But I love the Spectre. I mean, I'll listen to the original vinyl LP or the first state on the first CD issue of the in the real big fat case. I mean, I'd listen to
Right.
that any day. I enjoy all that stuff, and I don't mind it at all. And any of the Phil Spector work that he did with George or John Lennon, even I like all that.
Hmm. And what about the long and winding road?
Give me the Spectre version any
Yeah.
day. Yeah.
Oh, okay. We're in agreement. Okay.
Yeah, give me the spec. Yeah, that's the version that was the hit. Okay, I'm sure it would have been a number one hit without those strings and choir, but the strings and choir added to Long and Winding Road give that song the finality of the end of the Beatles. You hear the sadness in that song because of the strings and the choir. Yeah, it's there in McCartney's voice and fantastic playing, but that production on that song echoes and reinforces the end of the group. And that's why, I mean, I don't like that, but that's how moving it is, in my opinion.
You think Phil Spector was thinking that?
Maybe on some level, yeah, maybe. I know he felt that, well, Paul just reproduced those parts later on tour anyway, so he couldn't
Uh-huh.
have disliked it that bad. I know there's a quote of Spector saying that. So I enjoy, for the most part, I enjoy this Phil Spector Wall of Sound as a music listening fan. I do.
Yeah. It's still my favorite version of the song. But when you've got a great song like that one, I like every arrangement that's come out. When you
Oh,
hear
sure.
just the Let It Be Naked version,
Yeah,
you know it's a great song, but it's lacking something. And maybe that's because I've had all those years of the Phil Spector version being
sure.
pumped into my head. But it's a gorgeous song just by itself, Paul at the piano and, you know, very little else. But for a hit record, it needed some dressing there.
It did. It did. And even the version, even that same version without the strings, which I think made its appearance on the Let It Be Super Deluxe box set, that same vocal delivery from Paul is still great. It's actually a really good. It's not the Let It Be Naked version. I
Hmm.
think it's actually the version that's on Anthology 3, which is the version that got the strings and the choir added, the orchestra added to it. That version still is great because it's just a little bit of a different vocal delivery from Paul. Um, I think it's the Let It Be. Was it that the one where he kind of just did the spoken? He over the string interlude is where he did the talking. Many times I've been alone, many times I cried.
I
I
think so.
think I think it's on that one, but yeah, I think to be a hit, it needed to have some dressing on it, which you and I totally agree.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go
Um,
on to number.
moving on, we're up to what, number eight?
Yep.
Number eight, we're gonna go to Cloud Nine. Okay,
Mhm.
George's comeback album from 1987, and I am gonna go with probably this the minute I heard it, and I got this album when I was a kid
Hmm.
on vinyl, and I knew the song was classic even then. So man, that's a great George Harrison song. It's not going to be a hit, but damn, this is like Beatle-esque George Harrison. And the
Okay.
song that I've chosen from this album is Someplace Else.
Ooh.
That is George Harrison, like like something on Abbey Road quality, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Opening with that slide guitar, it hooks you right away.
Right.
I mean, I know it was for Shanghai Surprise, and it was a dud in that movie, but on this album, damn, home run of a track.
Okay. Well, the sound on that, I really, hey, since we just mentioned Phil Spector, what do you think of Jeff Lynne's production on George for Cloud Nine, and to a lesser degree, because it was scaled back a bit on Brainwashed?
I enjoy it. I enjoy Jeff's production on it. Maybe a little bit too much at sometimes, a little too ELO ish
Hmm.
sounding, like when you hear the beginning of That's What It Takes. It's got that ELO esque intro to it when you hear a song like that.
Right.
Maybe a little too heavy handed with the production on certain tracks,
Hmm.
but for the most part, fantastic. And Someplace Else is just, to me, probably this and When We Was Fab are probably my two favorite songs on the entire album,
Okay.
hands down. Again, and the slide guitar work on this is is in ridiculously awesome, and it's just buried as an album cut.
Yeah.
This is like George Harrison bona fide track. It
Right.
is,
It's majestic.
right? You agree?
Yeah. I love the slide guitar on here. It's like
Right.
on a high level. What
Yeah.
he adds there in the solo.
The
Uh,
solo, the guitar solo on this track is it's awesome. And then it comes right back into the chorus, loneliness and all that stuff. Fantastic. I guess I'll look for them all someplace else. It's awesome. 8 years old, 7 years old, I knew that song. It spoke to me. I'm like, this is a great song.
huh. I was in love with Cloud Nine when it first came out, with all the songs for the most part. Certain ones took a little bit longer, like a lot of Georgia stuff, like Hong Kong Blues. Oh no, that's not Cloud Nine. I meant
No, no.
Breath Away from Heaven. That's what I meant.
Breath Away from Heaven.
Um, yeah, but I grew to love every song, and instantly I couldn't help but play Devil's Radio.
Well, in your field, yeah.
There are no devils in my field.
Oh no.
No, none at all. None. Zero. But such a great rocker there. And it was sent as an emphasis cut to rock stations at the time.
Was it?
Got My Mind Set on You was the single. Um, but as an emphasis song for the stations that were known for playing rock, album rock, they played Devil's Radio, and I thought that should be a single too.
Could have been gossip. Gossip.
Yeah.
Oh man. Number nine, the old lucky number for me. You're gonna go back to All Things Must Pass.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling I think you would agree. Hopefully you do. Um, Again, this is more of a lyrical meaning of a song. And the song's great, the productions of it great, but the lyrics of this song have always spoken to me from the minute I heard it. probably 20 something years ago when I got this, and that is Run of the Mill from All Things Must Pass.
You're after my own heart here.
Run of the mill. Everyone has a choice when to or not to raise their voices. It's you that decide.
Right.
God, what a deeply personal, this is it. This is up to you. It's you that decides which way to turn while being all of that that you hear in the lyrics of this song should speak to you as a person, as a music fan, as a human.
Right. And it's strongly rumored it was about Paul and
Yes,
their
it was.
relationship.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
Uh,
the words by itself just
just
work as poetry, you know.
yeah, just take the lyrics by themselves. Forget about the production and the great horn. Again, there's the Spectre production on this. They're all on here. Um, but again, I do think it probably definitely had its roots in Beatles, with the
Mhm.
Beatles breaking up for sure.
Right.
Um, I mean, then when you heard it, did you think it was? Did you immediately think, oh, this is about the Beatles or not?
No, I
No.
just thought it was a song that could work universally, you know,
Yeah.
so you got a message maybe to a specific person or people in general, you know. Like you said, everyone has choice when to and not to raise their voices. It's you that decides. You're responsible for your own actions.
Pretty much, which
Yeah.
way will you turn while feeling that our love's not your concern? It's you that decides. It's a pretty universal song, which however way you slice it. Is it applicable to Paul and the Beatles? Maybe, but it certainly has the sting applied to it. If you want to infer that it
Yeah.
could that it could be applied towards Paul.
Yeah.
We'll never know, but God, I've always enjoyed this from day one.
Right.
And it's a real bona fide to me George Harrison classic. You could hear that song and so yeah, that's George Harrison. That's who he was. Honest, real, sincere, and meaningful lyrics, all and great songwriting, all in 2 minutes and 51 seconds. So
Yeah.
it wasn't a hit.
In much the same way that a lot of people interpret Wah Wah as being about
Yeah,
Paul. If you read what George said in I Me Mine, it's more about the struggles he was going with at Apple, and everyone was giving him a headache. He wasn't just pointing only at Paul, it was to everybody at the time. So, yeah.
so I've got one left, but I've got really two left because I've got an honorable mention, and they're both from the same album. So I'll do the first song first, and I don't. It's an album I don't listen to that often. Much like with Double Fantasy, I just don't listen to it that often because when I listen to it, I'm taken back to when he died, and of course I'm talking about Brainwashed.
Hmm.
So, and by this point I was fully fledged in my, Beatle collecting fandom and everything. I bought the vinyl, the CD. This is from when I got it. I don't listen to it that often, but one track for sure that I think resonates with me, it did then when it came out, and it still does, is Stuck Inside a Cloud.
Hmm.
Because it's George talking about him. He's talking about himself dying, basically,
Yeah.
when you hear that song. Never been so, all those lyrics, never been so little, never been, I lost my will to eat. He's talking about himself there in that song. And it's sad, which is why I don't listen to it that often.
Hmm. Real tough for you. You know, it is still difficult for you to listen to, say, Double Fantasy at this point.
Yeah. And I wasn't even alive when that record came out, but I don't listen to Double Fantasy. I don't put it on a lot because you learn about the history of everything, and it just when I hear Starting Over and Woman and Beautiful Boy and Watching the Wheels and some of the Yoko tracks on there, which and I don't listen to Yoko's music that often, but when I do, Double Fantasy is what I can because I think that's her best material. I think it's her strongest material, and I just can't listen to it. I can't listen to it that often because um, it's too painful. And the same thing for Brainwashed, and I lived through this because I was born just after John Lennon died, actually
Hmm.
exactly a month later. Actually, believe it or not, exactly a month later. So kind of connected to that, but George, I was 20 years old when he died, so that was like wow. The 90s had been such a fruitful period with the anthologies and BBC, and Yellow Submarine came out, and then we got the anthology book, and the 90s were such a inflaming pie, of course, and Ringo stuff. Vertical Man, the mid to late 90s was such a fruitful period. And then George and 9/11 and then George dying was such a shock. It was like, wow, you're not a kid anymore, and this, life happens. And George died, and a year later, we got his last musical statement. So when I hear lyrics about being sick and stuff like that, it takes you back. So Stuck Inside a Cloud is a song for me that will always be forever connected to George because of who he is. And because he was singing about himself. And when you watch the Brainwashed little documentary that came with the deluxe set,
Hmm.
that song, they're basically talking about that when that song is being played, when Danny talks about it. So that's kind of where I go to it with that. I don't know what your memories of Brainwashed were, or if you played it a lot on the air when it came out, or if you feel as strong as I do, but I definitely have an affinity with this record.
Oh, I have a different reaction altogether to the Brainwashed album, even though Stuck Inside a Cloud was him facing his own mortality, the reality of it. Um, but Brainwashed to me, because there are songs that cover several different periods. I know I heard Jim Keltner say that Stuck Inside a Cloud he remembered hearing like in the late 70s, like in between 33 and a third and the George Harrison album. Like he was working on it then. Maybe he changed lyrics on it later. I don't know. But you know that like Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea
Mm.
is from the Jules Holland show, which was from
Yep.
the 90s. Any Road is from the early 90s. It wasn't like it was all the last.
No. Yeah, there was a lot of works. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think he even demoed Any Road when he did that last appearance with Fuel Sang on VH1.
right. Yeah. So it's not like these are all the last songs that George worked on, but I do think that probably towards the last few years of his life when he knew that his time might come, he felt it was important to work on these songs and maybe finish up this album.
Yeah.
Whereas Double Fantasy, it's a different reaction. Nobody saw this coming. What happened to John? He was in
No.
a good place mentally. He enjoyed his 5 years away from the public spotlight. You can tell from songs like Starting Over, Beautiful Boy, what a happy person he was, Dear Yoko. Watching the Wheel says so much about him. He was all together in his head. He was in a good place. So, apart from the fact that these were the last songs that John, and actually some of those songs took a few years to finish from Double
Sure.
Fantasy, but it's the combination of the album came out right when he died, and he was so much in a good mood and only thinking optimistically and about the future and his plans and another album with Yoko and
Hmm.
a tour and all that adds to the grief
Right.
and the pain
Right.
of Double Fantasy. But I can
Which
still
is
listen to Double Fantasy and just appreciate the songs on there, all of them, all the songs. Woman is one of my favorite songs from John of his entire career, and so is
yeah.
Watching the Wheels. So,
Right.
it's a different experience, for me between Double Fantasy and Brainwashed. Brainwashed was a
Yeah.
collection of songs over a longer period of time. Probably most of them were from the last few years of his life, but not all of them were. And I don't necessarily feel sadness when I hear Brainwashed. Stuck Inside a Cloud, yes, directly. It's very pointed, that song.
Sure.
Um, it's a combination of when the album came out, it was a year after George had already died.
Right.
Obviously, the pain was still so strong. It still is for both of them. So, yeah, but it's a different reaction to me between Double Fantasy and
Of
Brainwash.
course, because they were two totally different scenarios and situations completely.
Yeah.
George George was sick for a long, long time, and it wasn't a surprise when he did finally pass. But there's something about a final musical statement from an artist that you love that becomes so
Mm.
final, whether it's planned or not.
Right.
So you look at these final musical statements differently, just because they're the last thing issued in their lifetime, whether they planned it or not, and they just take on a different life form. Double Fantasy and Brainwashed, and you could look at any look at the last album that anybody who's passed on, Warren Zevon, The Wind, or or the
Hmm.
last album that the Who made with Keith Moon, Who Are You? You look at these albums and they're like frozen in time because a situation's changed, life changed so much for those people afterwards. And Brainwash is one of them. And Stuck Inside a Cloud, from the day I heard it, always resonated with me as a pure George track, and one that meant a lot to me because he was talking about himself, talking to myself, crying out loud, only I can hear me, and I'm stuck inside a cloud.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was no question that was going to make my list here. And then my bonus track is on the same album, but it's the one that kicks off the record, a little more optimistic, Any Road, which
Okay.
I love the message of that song because it's just reassuring. It's, hey, look, you may not know what's planned for you right now, but you'll get there. May not be tomorrow, may not be 5 years from now, and it may not be 10 years from now, but you'll get there. And
Right.
that message of positivity, um, God, is so important and inspirational when sometimes you need something to look forward to and listen to. And the lyrics of that song, that time, and for many years after, I would always go back to and know that everything would be all right. I would find my way to where I needed to get to. Didn't
Hmm.
think, and that's just a personal one for me. That's my little that's my bonus track there on your show. But I think it goes back to, I mean, we saw it, you played it with Fugelsang, but I don't know if it predates that. I don't know when Any Road really popped up. Do you? Like how far it
Any
goes
Road,
back?
I think he said that he was writing in the early 90s when he was in Hawaii. And there was a sign that he saw where on one side it said any road and the other side said we'll take you there. And it was near a
Oh,
koi
that's right. There's the
pond.
picture. There's the picture of Jeff and George in Hawaii,
Yeah,
and it's the road sign. It says that's the sign. That's the exact sign that's there.
yeah.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. Trying to see if it's in the book here.
I
Looking at it.
think Danny said that it was written around the time when they were making a video, might have been for This Is Love.
Right. Oh, okay. Which was, I believe, done in Hawaii. So that makes sense. Yeah. Um, yeah, great lyrics though. Great lyrics.
Hmm.
The spin of the wheel, the roll of the dice, you pay your fare. If you don't know all of it, it rhymes, it makes sense, it's catchy, it's light, and it's optimistic. It's an optimistic track to look forward to. And it's funny. You may
And
not
the
know where you
lyrics,
came from, may not know where you are, you may not even wondered how you got this far. Traveling on the wing of a prayer by the skin of my teeth and the breath of a hair. All
brilliant
good.
words. And they flow so well, the
Yes.
way that they're metered, It's like the same number of syllables, maybe. It's like,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, he's got good syncopation on that track. He takes his breaths well with
yeah,
that. Again, it starts off with "Give me plenty of that guitar," and there's a little uke going, and yeah, that to me, that's another core George Harrison song. Who says all you need to know about the man, his beliefs, his spirituality, where he thinks he's going, and his message, and what he's telling people to believe in. And I did, and I'm glad I did because I still learn from it.
yeah. Well, he left us with a great album, of which we're so grateful that, he wrote these songs and Danny and Jeff Lynne finished it off. Couldn't be more grateful for the two of them doing that. So
I
yeah,
love that bit in the interview disc where they cut to Jeff and he's like, "I'm sorry, George. It might have been a little bit more finished than you like, but I'm sorry." Because obviously they cleaned it up a little bit, and maybe George wanted it to be not as complete. But before Jeff and Danny went and finished it, but I do remember seeing that video of Jeff Lynne apologizing to George, saying, "Look, if we've made it too posh and too
Bosh.
nice, I'm sorry. We just had to make sure that we had to finish it." And hey, that's an album that I think you guys a couple of years ago on Talk More Talk did another listen to, maybe on the anniversary of his passing or the album
Hmm.
coming out. I remember a Talk More Talk show on Brainwashed, or maybe it was things we said today. I can't remember, but you guys did it. One of you guys did a show on that, and that caused me to pull it back out again and listen to it because, as I said before, it's not a record I listen to all that often.
Yeah. I think the word that Jeff Lynne used was posh. He
Posh.
didn't want the album to sound too posh, like I guess
Right.
Round 9 was, which I never thought it was, but it was
No.
their ears.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's those are my 10.
Okay. Excellent list. Thank you so much, Andy. So before we go, tell the folks what you've been up to with Two Legs.
Well, if this is posting tonight, which I think you said it was, Two Legs has episode. We have our next episode dropping Saturday night, which will be the 9th of November, and that's episode 264. And that was we did a show. We've been doing about once a month a show and a series called Divided Album Series, an album, a Paul album that we think kind of splits the fan base a little bit. We did last month. We did Driving Rain with Dino V. And this month, just Tom and I did on a whim, because we actually have never really talked about it properly, was Wings at the Speed of Sound and how
Okay.
that album is perceived. And it's kind of overlooked in the greatness of the Wings and solo McCartney material, despite having two mega hits on it, one number one and one number three with Let 'Em In. It kind of falls by the wayside in the with the Band on the Runs and the Venus and Mars, and especially now all the talk that London Town and Back to the Egg get, and everybody's listening to those records, waiting for re-releases of those, and even Wildlife and Red Rose Speedway, which we got 5 years ago. You know, Wings at the Speed of Sound, to revisit that and go by that album track by track and contextualize the period where Paul was with Wings at that time was pretty interesting to kind of go through it, because it was an album recorded pretty much in the middle of a tour, and it was
Right.
done pretty quickly over the course of maybe a few weeks, 7 or 8 weeks. And whenever we do this, it gives us an excuse to pull off our archive sets off the shelf and take a look at the book. So we showed the book in the episode, and listened to the record a few times this past week, and it was a good episode. So that's dropping Saturday. What are your memories of Wings at the Speed of Sound from the summer of '76?
Paul was at the apex of his career in terms of popularity then. He had the biggest tour, although one could question since Frampton Comes Alive was such a big release. Um, just about every single song from that album got airplay on rock radio. And for all the people in the world who think of Wings as being strictly Paul McCartney and a backup band, if you listened to rock radio in 1976, you would have heard Time to Hide on the radio with Denny Lane singing lead. You would have heard Wino Junko with Jimmy McCall.
Really? That got
Yes,
on the air too?
got on the air in New York on WPLJ. They played Beware My Love a lot.
That
Yeah,
I know.
yeah. And they played She's My Baby, obviously the two big hits. I'm thinking that I might have heard San Ferrian on the radio and possibly Warm and Beautiful. But, you heard all these different lead. Oh, they played Cook of the House.
Really?
Yes. I
I'm
remember
surprised by
hearing it on
that.
the radio back then. Um, and granted, it was for that period of time, and you rarely ever hear any of those album cuts since then. You only hear, if you hear anything at all, Silly Love Songs and Let 'Em In. And I'm not talking about the Beatles channel or a Beatles radio show, but yeah, I mean, they were the hottest thing.
Well,
And
and we said that on the episode. He said at this point, Wings, Led Zeppelin, Peter Frampton, like they were on that level.
yeah,
That's where Wings was on that same level as a live act, especially
right.
here in America. Like Zeppelin, Queen, Wings, like that's where that this was it for them. And this record, despite it kind of, we said in the episode, it's got a it's a very polished record. It's produced very well, but live those songs take on a whole other
Yeah.
feel. Something like Beware My Love. I mean, it's really it's fantastic as an album track, but live those songs from The Speed of Sound, which were really featured later in the set list for a reason, because they were promoting the album here in America. The album
Hmm.
came out in March of '76, and Wings Tour of America was in May. So that's a pretty new album
Yeah.
at the time. So it was very fresh, and it was nice to go back and listen to that record again, because it's not one that I play start to finish a whole lot. I enjoyed it, but hearing The Note You Never Wrote and Must Do Something About It with Joe English, which I think was great. I think he sings it better than Paul actually.
I would agree with you. Although I think the version that came out with Paul on lead vocals is more like a guide vocal. I don't really think he put a lot of effort in the vocals on
No,
that version.
no.
You just reminded me, the note you never wrote got airplay too.
Huh. Yeah,
Strictly
and,
on rock radio, not singles oriented radio,
right.
AM radio. But yeah, most of that album got airplay. And you had all this momentum building from Ben on the Run and Venus and Mars, and actually even before that, Red Rose Speedway. It was this gradual build, and it was number one for 7 weeks, that album.
It was his fourth number one album in a row in
Yep.
America.
And
Um,
it held number one longer than any other McCartney album or Wings album, which shows the popularity at the time of the group. But again, emphasis on the group, not just Paul McCartney.
and that's what we were saying in the show. It's like Paul had made such an effort early in Wings to really be a group, more of a group democratic effort, right? With Red Rose
Yep.
Speedway, especially the rejected 2 LP was going to be much more band centric. You would have had Seaside Woman on there, and Denny's I Would Only Smile, and Henry would have had his Henry's Blues on there. And
Yeah.
the record company rejected that and said, no, Paul, you need to be lead front and center. So, really, in a weird way, Paul got his democratic band version of of what he wanted for Wings
Right.
the height of Wings. He didn't get it at the beginning of when the band started, but by the time of Speed of Sound, they had become so successful that they said, "Okay, Paul, you want to have an album that's really more spread out? Go right ahead and do it." But he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it in the early days of Wings, even though he wanted to. So he finally got what he wanted. It just took a little bit longer.
Yeah. If you just look at how they were billed on their albums, that tells you everything. The
Yep.
first Wings album was Wildlife. It was just Wings. Didn't do that well. So Red Rose Speedway had to be Paul McCartney and Wings, and that went to number one. And then Ben on the Run was Paul McCartney and Wings, and that went to number one. With the security of two number one albums in a row, Venus and Mars just became Wings. Wings at the Speed of Sound was just Wings.
And
Wings
then
Over America was just Wings. London Town was just Wings. And Back to the Egg was just Wings.
by that point, and I believe Junior's Farm was just billed to Wings too. I don't think that was Paul McCartney and Wings on the 45. I think it
No,
did
that was
say
Paul
Wings.
McCartney and Wings, I think.
Oh, okay.
I think so. I'm pretty sure that was Paul McCartney and Wings.
Right. So by that point, by 75, he had, I guess with Venus and Mars, they said, okay, you want to call it Wings, go ahead. And it's really, and we said that Venus and Mars is kind of the blueprint was there for the democracy with Denny singing Spirits of Ancient Egypt and
Right.
Jimmy McCulloch singing Medicine Jar. It was those it was planted. The roots were planted. The seeds were planted for them to be more of a band, and you really really see it on Speed of Sound, and that's what we talked about for that episode. So it was really nice to dive back and listen to it and go through the archive book, which was again just put together so well. A little short on bonus material. There wasn't a whole
Very
lot of
short.
outtake there. I mean, the double LP there's not even a fourth side. It's just etching. That just goes to show you how short of material they were. You had the demos were nice, but there was not a lot of bonus material.
Well, therein lies my gripe with a lot of McCartney's archival box sets. Some of them are great and offer a lot of material. Flaming Pie was great. Red Rose Speedway was great.
McCartney too.
Flowers in the Dirt, I think. Yeah, McCartney too. But then there are the ones like Speed of Sound, the first McCartney album. Wasn't that
Not a
much
lot. Not
material.
a lot. No.
Um, yeah, I mean, I just wish that for so many of these albums, there's alternate takes you can put on there. They may not be great, but the fans, they want to hear this
Well,
stuff.
I tell you what, Tom made a great point when we did our show, and it was really great. He said he wishes that the McCartney camp would follow the Lennon suit,
Yeah,
just for not for everything, but could you imagine if we had like a evolution documentary mix of say silly love songs where we
right.
just heard the bass part and then
Uh-huh.
we heard another mix that was just the vocals and the harmonies and then we heard one that was like a rough mix. Can you imagine that for silly love songs for a song that's so complex
Right.
and kinetic with as a band with the bass and especially the harmonies? Imagine if we had a Lennon-esque breakdown of that song.
I've been saying the same thing in my podcast. That is the template to follow, the Lennon ones. I mean, anybody that can possibly complain about the Lennon box sets is crazy. They give you so
I'll
much.
only just say this though. I do just wish though with the Evolution documentaries, we're not getting the full demos before they transition into, they're choosing what to give
Mm,
you before
okay,
they go into this, they show you how the song evolved. I wish we had those full demos from the germ of the idea to what it became. And now we're talking probably about a 20-minute track then, because if we're going to include a demo and then another and then a first version, and then what ends up becoming the master,
right.
it's not economical for release. I get that, but there are some moments with that, especially with Mind Games. I heard a version of Intuition from the Evolution documentary that I never heard before in
Mm.
all my years of collecting bootlegs, and it stops and then it goes into like the actual session, and I'm like, I wish I heard more of that demo.
It would be
Little,
nice if there was just a separate disc of demos, but you don't know total if you put all the tracks from the album on there, how much time that would take up. They
that's
made
the
me
thing.
real short demos. It could be a 20-minute disc, you know, which I would still like anyway.
Well, the
But
Harrison
that
camp
makes
did that
sense.
great with the with All Things Must Pass. Day one demos, and they gave you two
Yeah,
discs of demos. That was
right.
fine. But that was our show, and it was a nice visit to go back and listen. And maybe next month we'll do Pipes of Peace. Who knows?
Okay. It's kind of similar to what we do on Talk More Talk with another listen.
Yes, yeah, a little bit. One that we just try to pick an album that is not universally loved, like we know that Band on the Run is, or All Things Must Pass is, and
Right.
we try to pick an album that might be a little polarizing amongst fans. And that it is a big album, but I think it's one that kind of people they tend to forget in the hugeness of McCartney, and that's why we chose that one. So that'll be up on Saturday.
Okay. And I know that you did a show where you brought up Driving Rain and Press to Play, which are like the two albums that fans are the most divisive about. And some
Yes.
people really defend one more than the other. And it's interesting to hear that because I know Driving Rain has picked up a lot over the years. People are really appreciating that more, and to
Yes.
some degree, Press to Play. So, you know,
And I must say, when we did that episode with Dino V, I was like, I liked Driving Rain a lot better than I thought I did.
hmm,
I thought, and we listened to it, and I'm like, you know what? If this was pared down to an 11 or 12 track album, and we get rid of three or four songs, it's a pretty good album. And I changed it. I came away from it thinking, because with the passage of time, you think, oh, that album is just not good. It's a good album. But with McCartney, with so many albums following that, becoming better and better,
hmm,
Chaos and Creation, Memory Almost Full, Electric Arguments, it's easy for an album like that to kind of get swallowed up and forgotten. And that's why we did the one with Driving Rain. And it was nice to go back and listen to that again, because it really wasn't that bad. It wasn't. There's been so much more great stuff from it that we don't go back to it as much.
hmm. Well, you make a good point. I know a lot of people have said about Driving Rain that it's too long of an album. Would you rather have had, because in so many cases, McCartney records two albums worth of material and he puts out one disc and then the other songs are bonus tracks on CD singles or whatever. Would you
Hmm.
rather Driving Rain was shorter and then let's just say you took out three songs, but those three songs ended up as bonus tracks on CD singles? Would you rather have it that way?
Yeah. Yeah. Make it 11 or 12 tracks. I think it's got 16 tracks. Like Rinse the Raindrops is an awesome track. He jams
Yes.
out on it, but I think it's too heavy for an album. Cut that, cut Freedom, cut Spinning on an Axis, and maybe one more. Um,
I
you
love spinning on an axis.
you do?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Especially
Wow.
that one.
You okay? I was not expecting that, but different strokes for different folks. Yeah, you could have saved those for bonus, see extra tracks on a CD single, like he did with Chaos and Creation. You got two or three
Right.
extra songs as
Right.
B-sides on CD singles. Could have done the same thing with Driving Rain, and I think it would have maybe held up a little bit better. But again, as we said in that episode, timing was everything too. That album came out 2 months after 9/11. George had just passed away. A
Hmm.
lot happened in the world. So kind of, and then you have an album that's 16 tracks, a cover that's not so great. It's just gonna, and then eventually, you keep knocking it out of the park with studio albums, it's gonna naturally just fade away. if he had done none of, if he hadn't done any albums, say after Driving Rain, say till I don't know 2009 or 10,
Mm,
I think we're looking at Driving Rain a little differently.
because he's put out too much stuff.
Yeah, Chaos and Creation, Memory Almost Full, and Electric Arguments from 2005 to 2008. That is three albums that are fantastic, can't miss, knock out of the park, great albums for the most part. Electric Arguments is really good, but I mean, three albums and you're 4 years removed from your last studio album, and then we're gonna hit you with three more albums. It's a lot.
Hmm. Yeah. Still, no matter what, I mean, we're going off on a tangent here, but such a big difference between the 70s McCartney and then what followed, especially in the 90s on up. If you're looking at pop rock albums, he probably did the most in the 70s.
Yes.
You expected something every single year, whether it was an album or a single. Once you're talking about the 90s and the 2000s, less often do the pop albums come out, but you're mixing that with classical albums, you're mixing that with the Fireman releases, live albums.
Mm,
2000s, he's been touring,
touring. Yeah,
you
you make a good
know,
point
most
there,
years.
Ken. In the '70s, you're pumping an album out a year, and a single, so it's different. The decade, less albums over more years. That's a good point. But yeah, but we have it. We'll have it forever to analyze and study.
Okay, so if you check your description box, there's a link there. If you'd like to learn more and catch all the shows from Two Legs, they put out shows fast and furious. Nobody can keep up with them, except maybe Joe Mayo, but that's another issue.
Yeah, yeah, but that's where we are. And Ken, thanks so much for having me on tonight. This was a blast choosing 10 songs from George that were not big hits, deep album cuts that I really resonated with and gave me a reason to go back down the rabbit hole and discover them again. So thank you.
Well, thank you for this list. And for all of you who are into this whole idea, we just did a show with Wayne and Rachel Cabral. They put together the George Harrison Tribute Show in Massachusetts every year, also known as Harry Fest.
Right.
They gave me their 10 deep tracks for George. Beatley Tone, a good friend of ours, just did one on John Lennon deep tracks for Deeper You Go. So you might want to check out those shows as well. So, Andy, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be talking to you soon, I'm sure. And thank you for having me on Two Legs just recently, talking about what's going on in the news.
Yeah, and we'll do that again real soon. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks so much, Ken.
Okay. Thanks to all of you for watching. Please subscribe if you can, if you haven't done so yet. And we'll see you all next time. Take care.
Bye.
Yeah.